Hello, everybody. Good to have you here.
Great to have you here. Great to be here with you guys.
Yes,
It's good to be
yes,
here with you guys. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you. How
Yes.
are you?
Oh, good. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. You are very welcome to be here with us. Great pleasure to be here with you. And today we are going to go to the series, the episode 3 of the series Family Life that was created by the Department of Family with the Sembradores de Luz. And today we are going to talk about communication within the family. So we have with us today two people that are very good. We've worked in other projects together, and I have a great pleasure to introduce to you these two people that I consider as dearest friends. So welcome, Stephen and Dan. If you would like to say hello, just say something before we start.
Dan first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's just a pleasure to be here with you guys again. I love how we're able to connect to each other, even though we're physically apart from each other. Yay for technology. Pleasure to be here with you guys and look forward to our conversation.
Yes, great.
Hello,
Great to
everybody.
hear.
It's a pleasure to be here and sharing this moment with my two lovely friends, Sylvan and Dan. And I hope we can help our friends here from Sembradores de Luz spreading the Spiritism, especially for them. They spread Spiritism in English, in Spanish, and Portuguese. So they are brave. They are doing an amazing
Yeah.
job.
Yes, and it's a great pleasure for us to be here participating today as well and joining this great work because it's extremely important. And the theme of today is extremely important for the times we are living now, the communication within the family. I think this is the family is the cell of society, is the ground in which everything else is built upon, and communication within this family is extremely important subject. So we have some ideas to talk uh, um, about this subject, and I'm going just to introduce some points that you can talk about really friendly here. So the first question really here is, what are the main obstacles for the communication within the family today? And how much do you think that technology affects this communication? So, Dan, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Again, we're very excited to be here. Communication is such an important topic, isn't it? Like, not only in our families, but for everything that we do, we need to communicate. And that means sharing what is it that we want to share with people in a manner that they can receive it well and we can pass our knowledge back and forth and also listen, right? So, family communication or communication in the family is of the utmost importance because family is where we come to learn. We see this clearly on our studies. We see that in our spirits book. The family ties piece is a big one. We know that as reincarnating spirits, we are given a family in which we'll be able to develop those things that we need to work on. Our home base is our family, and that will tell us a lot about what kind of challenges and the kind of preparation we'll have for the future. And having the ability to clearly share our feelings, our emotions, our wants, our needs is very important because if we don't share that with others, then how can they possibly know what our intentions are, what our needs are? And if we don't listen to the sharing of others, then how can we possibly know what is it that they require so that they can feel safe, appreciated, and loved? So, communication within the family is extremely important, especially given that spiritist context that we have, that families is our family basis, is our headquarters for life. Very important. And of course, I think that I don't want to hog the air too much, but on the technology front, we're all faced with these technology challenges today where we think that many of our tablets and phones may be posing a barrier to communication within families. And I think that is also true. But I want to think that tablets, computers, phones are not the challenge within the communication within families. They are a factor in which it happens. I am of the belief that when the communication process is solid between family members, none of that stuff comes in the way. So I really think it's about us making time to really listen to each other and to develop practices and spaces in which we can listen to our children, we can listen to our parents, we can listen to our partner, we can spend time together. I think that those little devices, they just show some of the shortcomings in our personal personalities that likes to be connected with something greater, perhaps outside, something easier, something safer, right? Because one-on-one communication is always hard in the sense of we're exposing ourselves and we're physically present. And so it is a lot easier for us to think about what we're going to say and send a text message out or say something to somebody we cannot see because it's a lot easier. We can be a lot more courageous and rude, perhaps. But face to face communication, where we feel the energy of each other, that's where we really grow and learn. And so that's why I think it's so important. So I think that we can dive deeper into the communication piece with technology. I'm curious to see what my friends here are going to have to say. But at the end of the day, we just have to remember that our spiritual essence, who we really are, our immortal spirits, navigating through this beautiful planet and this existence with others, and especially others in our family. So those are our people. These are people that we need to talk to communicate with on the priority basis. And so it's important for us to make that time and make sure that we engage with people in ways that are just more than one word. How are you? Good. What are you doing? Okay. Right. Like it's important for us to make those times for where we can go deeper. So maybe we can talk a little bit about those habits and what is it that we do in our families to do that. But communication is super important, especially when we realize we're spirits. And let's make sure that we don't let technology get in our way. What do you think, Stephen?
Dan, I think you are 100% correct. And even though these little pieces, it's kind of blocking our communication, but they are so important as well. And these remind us that in the spirit books on the question 766 says that social life and interaction are natural laws for human development. So if we use communication tools to avoid a real conversation, we may delay our moral responsibilities towards one another. So, in order to overcome this, we needed to kind of provoke moments in our life, in our family, like an hour, no uh, 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 um, no technology. We can having how many of us don't have a shared meal within the family? So how long don't share a meal and sit on the table, no TV, no phones, no nothing. Let's talk. Let's see how was your day, what's annoying you, what is good for you. So we need to create those moments instead of ban those technologies and create other problems. We needed to teach our family members to integrate technology in a good way among the family. So that's my first takeaway here.
Takeaway here. I love it. It's not the technology, it's how we use it, right, Stephen? I mean, look at
Exactly.
us right now.
I
We're using
have a
technology
question
for a
for
great
both of
purpose.
you. I have a question for both of you because anyway, you said the technology is not a problem, and I agree with you. It's not a problem if well used, but there are many families in which, unless the parents are quite strict, in taking away, or for at least during the time of the meal or something, you don't use the phone. I think there is a need for the parents to say, from this time to this time, you're not going to use the technology, because it's very common to see families in which actually not only the children, but the parents also are on their phones. And we see this, when you go on a bus or in a tube here in London, sometimes you have families and they are all on their phones. They are together, but at that moment they are talking to somebody else. And so, how do you think this would? Uh, what can be done to unite the family? Because sometimes technology can be intrusive. How do you see it?
Well, it's there's no way to not disagree with you, my dear. It is very intrusive. Sometimes we can see that as your example here in Dublin is the same thing. We are on the bus, we are on the street. We have four members of the family, but nobody's talking to each other. Everybody's busy with their phones, and they are beside each other. So I completely agree in terms of we need to introduce this technology in a peaceful way, in a progressive way. By what? Setting barriers. Phone is allowed from this time to this time. Phone is allowed after duties have been done. Phone is allowed after homework done. So we need to create these, because if you leave them, they will stay 24 hours on the phones. And but at the same time, we need to remember these rules are valid for the parents as well, because the parents need to do the same thing. So it's a two-way street here. It's not just one way street. No, you do what I say and that's it. And when your child come talk to you, you say, one moment, I'm busy here, and you don't talk to your children. So these rules are valid for the parents as well. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. And I was just going to double click on that idea, right? Kids, if we're talking about kids, they learn by modeling more than anything else. And what they are seeing in the life outside is everybody using a phone or a tablet all the time. So they will naturally gravitate towards that. And it's okay. But I think what Stephen was saying is key is what is it that we are doing? What kind of habits of behavior are we installing in our house? And how are we holding up to that? And when we do that, it's not just about put away your phones, is how are you going to engage in meaningful conversation? What are you going to talk about? What is your plan? Are you just going to talk about your days? Do you have something that you want to share about your days? Are you going to go first to model it so that your kids can see that you're sharing too, or are you going to force them to share first? Right? So there's all kinds of things that we can think about. Share about your day, ask them questions, tell them what was good about your day, what was not great about your day, tell them how you enjoy learning from them. Do different things. And sometimes, for instance, a great habit that we love to do is have board game night. One day we just break out old school games that are board games, and we sit around the table and we play board games where you actually have to roll a dice or you have to ask questions to each other. And in the beginning, kids always complain. I have young ones, I know 12 and 6, and they are like, can we just do something else? 10 minutes in, they're so excited about it. Like everybody loves it, right? So once the connection gets going, it's really great for us to do that. So yes, model that as parents, but make sure it's not just superficial either. And make sure that you are leading the way by sharing things and telling them about your day and exposing yourself and inviting them into this relationship. Here's one thing, and I'm curious about what our friends here think, that I noticed quite a bit. I think that we're often worried about how is it that we're going to teach our kids? How is it that we are going to tell them what is right and what is wrong? And all those things are wonderful. But because we are reincarnationists, because we understand that who we are has had many lives before, isn't it also fair for us to think of how our kids are going to teach us? What is it that they may bring that we may learn from? So it's not about us telling them how it's going to be, but inviting them to the conversation and wondering if there are things that we can learn with them and from them from our day to day, whether it's new slangs or what's happening in the world or how to see things differently. We as parents also have to make space for our younger members of our family to be heard and seen and valued. And I think that's very tricky too, because sometimes we just want them to share, want them to tell things, but we're not really listening. And we're not really doing that ourselves either. So I think what Stephen was saying was spot on, which is you got to create a habit, you got to do it, and you just have to create that environment in which you are accepting of those things.
So this is great actually, because you both have said things. How can the parents initiate this difference? And how, you say, no, we're not going to use technology. You have some family time together. Because I mean, you two are people who really think about these things. But how would you not a device, but how would you say for families who don't have this control? How could you inspire other people to think, oh no, we
Oh
have
no, we
some
have
time with
some
the
time with the
family?
family. Yeah, it's a great question. I'll jump in here, and Steven is going to back me up or go against it. Let's see. He's going to add up. He's going to add up to the mix. I think that it's about making a plan, right? And I found that with kids, it's also really interesting for us to explain to them what is it that we're trying to do, right? So maybe it's calling a family meeting together and say, hey, I noticed that we have not spent a lot of time talking to each other. I really would love us to have more time talking to each other because I love you. I want to hear about your days. What can we do together? What kind of traditions or habits or things can we do to make sure that we're spending quality time together away from our phones, right? So it's inviting them to the conversation and listening to their ideas. Maybe they will come up with ideas. Maybe it's board game night. Maybe is meals that have no phones next to them, or 2 or 3 meals at least a week, right? Maybe it's having some time before you go to sleep. That's another point, for instance, that we do with the kids. We try to do with the kids here. We're not always great at it, but we try to hold ourselves to, which is, half an hour before bedtime, there is no screen whatsoever, right? Just so that we can kind of wind down, and because it takes a little bit of time for us to disconnect to those hormones, to all the energy that comes from watching something on a screen. And you'd be surprised, but I find that as the lights go down at night and we're getting ready to sleep and we've done our prayers, conversations start, right? The kids want to start to talk about things. Sure, maybe they don't want to go to sleep just yet, right? But as the light dims a little bit and we are away from the inputs and we have done our prayers, that human connection just flows more naturally. So maybe it's coming up with new habits. What works for your family? Invite your kids in, but share with them what is it that you're trying to accomplish, as opposed to just telling them what you're going to do. Because I noticed that this new generation, especially, is really keen on understanding why things happen. And once you invite them into the conversation, you might be surprised. They might have some wonderful, interesting ideas, and they will feel like they're part of the process, that they have a voice, and that's also their process. And that is really great. And that's a great skill for them to have for the future too. Um, so how do you do that, Stephen, on the other side of the pond?
Well, then we need to remember that this kind of address the question we have on our screen here from our friend Bernadette. Um, According to Spiritism, um, education is the moral development of the soul. And in order to have this moral development of the soul, it requires dialogue, affection, and example. We can find on the Gospel according to Spiritism, uh, they teach us that charity is not just material, but includes indulgence, understand, and patience. So, teaching this to your kids and allowing your kids teach this to you requires patience, requires time, requires uh, successful moments, requires not non-successful moments. It's it's you are building something. So we, I know you may love your kids, but loving your kids in silence, it is one thing. But loving your kids, telling them exactly what Dan said. Hey, tell them what you try to achieve. We need to communicate better as a family. We need to deal with our problems as a family. We need to share our problems as a family. You need to express your opinion. I have to have patience in order to listen what you think about it. And all these bonds and offers security for our growing ups. That's
Much. Thank you so much, both of you. You know, it's a very interesting um, discussion, and your points are very, very interesting. Um, Going back to what you said, Dan, originally, you said, you know, technology, and I think Stephen more or less said the same thing. Technology itself is not a problem. And both of you have already replied to things, and it is. So, how can families who are so dispersed? Because I think that families sometimes are very dispersed. I know someone who the mother calls the children to have dinner, supper, on the phone. The children are upstairs on their phones or whatever. So she texts them, dinner is ready. You know, I mean, this is a reality. It's a normal thing. So how can we learn? Because the problem really is not the technology, but how we communicate within, how the spouses talk to each other, how the children, and I think it starts with the parents. The parents need to have a way of communicating with each other with dignity, with respect to each other's opinions. And then, of course, we filter through to the children. So how can we uh, because we also as spiritists we know that that child that's there can be, you know, like 6 year old, but is a very old soul, extremely wise. And I think one of the things we really need to pay attention, because especially some of the children being born now, they're very mature, they're very grown up. And some parents almost feel, you know, inadequate because their children are so exceptional. So how can we integrate this connection between the parents first and then safing down to the children and of course the extended family? Because we also have moved away from extended families. I mean, personally, when I was a child, you know, whenever someone in my family, one of my aunts used to have children, they would go to the mother's house or the mother-in-law's house, and all the aunts together, the cousins together. We always had birthday parties together, Christmas together, Easter together. So we are very much, it was almost like a little village. And also, not only the family, the close family and the extended family, but also neighbors. I mean, I remember doing, you know, climbing trees and neighbors telling me, get down. I'm going to tell your mother. And you would obey because, you know, you had the respect. So how can, and those doesn't seem to be like this, but how do you think this unity of the family and the surrounding people around us, the friends and the families and you know neighbors who care for you and everything, how could we integrate this?
well. So you
Is it
said
too
something very,
complicated a question?
yeah, yeah. No, it's a, at least it is my reality, because neither myself nor my my spouse, we do have our family here. My family is my neighbors. My family is my friends. If I have to go to the hospital today or tomorrow, I need to rely on friends. I need to rely on neighbors. That That's my reality here today. I don't have my, oh, let me call my cousin here, let me call my uncle here, and they by obligation, because we are family, they need to put us in a car and take me to the hospital. No, I need to treat you differently. But also we need to understand that generations differences are also spiritual differences. We have in those kids today different spirits compared to our time. Like I give a simple example. I remember when my sister born, she took, like, I don't know, weeks to open her eyes. My daughter, the first thing she did when she's out of my wife, she opened the eyes and almost said, "Hi, Daddy, how are you?" You know, so it is different. So and also the gospel, according to spiritualism, remind us that parents are entrusted by God to guide, not control their children. And children must be also learn patience with the elder ones. Like you said, when a neighbor say, "Hey, get down off this tree," you obey. So we need to express this. And when we have this respect between each other, when both and we view each other as a fellow spirits, and that we are sharing the same journey, they can we can build bridges across these generation gaps. So
Great.
Dan,
Yeah, and
I think
that's
we can
that's
catch
where
from here.
exactly where I was gonna go, Stephen. When you that's why I was like shaking my head in a positive way so vigorously when you said, generation differences are also spiritual differences. I think that the comment about extended families is really great. I think that if we zoom out from a spiritist perspective, we understand that we're going through a big spiritual migration, a big spiritual change in the world. Like we've come to a point where our world is really evolving and it has to move forward. And so we have an influx of different kinds of souls from different places and so forth. But I think what's really important is, our families have been pulled apart. We live in different places. And so the models from before that served our generation and generation before are not the models of living that we see nowadays. We see smaller families, we see scattered families, we see all kinds of different things. And I think that as we think about this in general too, it's important for us to understand that the models in which we grew up with within the family piece, they were based in clear hierarchical boundaries. You knew from the beginning that people who were older than you were hierarchically more important and should be obeyed. That was the custom and the norm of the times. And even if you go backwards in time, your parents had even stricter hierarchical boundaries, and their parents even more, right? So hierarchy was a very clear social construct. Nowadays, as we evolve, we are also having to reinvent that because we ourselves are challenging hierarchical structures. We are no longer believing in hierarchical structures, political structures, all kinds of structures, because we're going through the spiritual phase of moving forward, and just command and control culture is not the way that we grow up and develop our critical thinking and our overall development. So these models are crumbling, where we are going more to a collaborative piece. We see this at work, where we have to make sense of how to interact with people. It's not just more of what your boss says, you do it. You have multiple bosses, you're dealing with multiple stakeholders. That is also true in the family, and that means that we have to adapt ourselves. Why am I saying all of this? We could have a whole conversation about the so-called planetary transition and so forth, right? But I think a pragmatic thing for families is this: the models of the world are changing, and family is meant to prepare people for the world. So families are also changing. So, which means that the hierarchical idea of the people who are older say something and the kids obey it's not working very well anymore, right? Especially for the reason that Stephen described, which is the spirits are coming in, they are also at the development level that they are no longer accepting those hierarchical structures. So what do we do? I think key to all of this is we are under the impression that to be parents, because this is what we learned, we had to be the holders of all knowledge and know everything. In the new modern world, that it no longer applies. We cannot be the owners of all expertise because there's so much information out there. What we really need to do is think ourselves as facilitators. So we need to change our roles as parents from having the authority to tell our kids to do everything and expect complete obedience to becoming facilitators and saying, listen, my job is to facilitate your development. Here's why I think this is important and here's what you should do. But I don't know everything. So I also have to learn. A facilitator is not a sage on the stage, right? It's somebody who guides you and who coaches you. So we need to be more of a coach than a strict boss when it comes to parenting. There are moments where we're going to use our authority for sure because it's best for our kids. But there are moments too where we have to embrace this idea of sharing it with others and why is it that we're doing and being open to feedback, right? And so when we have those things with parents, how can we help? Can we do all these things? Is we have to listen to them and we have to share with them. Like for instance, I'll give you a practical example that has worked in my household quite a bit. If I tell my kids no, they can't do iPad or they can't do something, generally they're not very happy about it, as expected, right? Nobody is. But when I expect them, for instance, that when I explain to them, for instance, the reason why, right, they become a lot more tolerable, right? My little terrorists over here become a lot kinder. What do I mean by that? I generally tell them, hey, remember, I'm your dad. My job is twofold. I have to keep you safe and I have to prepare you for the world. What I'm doing here today is preparing you for the I know you don't like it, but you have to make sure that you develop the habit of getting your backpack ready every morning or I shouldn't have to tell you to put your shoes on 3 times before getting out of the house, right? It's important for you to learn that skill. If you don't do that, then there will be consequences, right? By explaining to them the reason why I'm doing it, they are less grumpy and they fall in line a little bit better, right? And for me, it's a very clear shift in this psyche of our children, in which when they are explained a little bit of why they're doing it, even though I'm using my authority still, they are more susceptible to that message. And I wonder if in our world, we are not seeing the same thing, right? How do we want to be told to do things at work in our relationships? Do we just want a mandate down or do we also want some explanation? If we see our kids as those immortal spirits who are just like us, they're also going to want that. I'm not saying we should become our kids' best friends and just treat them as best friends. I think it's great for you to have a great friendship, but you also a coach and a tutor, as Stephen brought us to the spirits book, right? The family ties piece that we were talking about before. We have a role of guiding them, so we have to be firm at times, but we also have to understand that we don't know everything, and it's okay for us to admit that and model that to the kids and just keep the high picture in mind, which is our job is to prepare them for the world and keep them safe. And we may not always know how to do it, but we're going to do our best. And here's my best today. It's open for discussion later, but now I need you to do this, right? So it's a really mental shift that's changing the world, I think. It's a spiritual phase, like this Stephen described. And I think it's good for us to understand this because we are going to come back in this new world. We may be our grandchildren's children, and we will also demand the same kind of clarity and coaching, right? So it's important for us to start to do that now. And with that, I will stop babbling my way through. But it's important for us to understand a spiritual perspective and the shift in processes, in methodologies, in structures, in hierarchy that is happening in the world, and asking ourselves as parents if we also don't need to put some time into learning how to become better facilitators as opposed to just bosses for our children.
This is fantastic, actually, what you just said, because that's how it should be with the families. We know that there is a difference with spirits that are coming, are extremely uh, they're a lot more compassionate sometimes, a lot more deep in what they think and everything. And I think one of the most important points that you made, that I thought, Dan, was the fact that you said, yes, we need a friendship, but I need sometimes to have the authority because my children need to know what is right and wrong. And I think this is one of the very important points, because sometimes we see quite among families, people that are friends, they want to be their children's best friends. And I think best friends is, you as a parent, you can be a friend, but not you. There are moments, like you pointed out, that you need to have the authority to say no and to guide them, because one of the roles of parenthood is to actually guide your children to a better life. And I think this is the important balance. What do you think of that, Stephen?
I completely agree. We can, as was you were speaking, I remind about that that passage we have in the Bible, the Jaw, when he was upset about everything was happening to him, and he said to God, "Hey, we need to talk." And God, yes, we can talk, but you come as a human being, and I will come as a God. So if our children's wants to be our parents and we treat them equally, we will always have a problem. That's why we have problems today, because they trying to judge, they trying to be at the same level. But no, I am your parent. I have some responsibility. First, moral responsibility. Second, spiritual responsibility. The third, we have our society responsibility over those kids. So we need to be friends. Yes, we can, but we cannot forget that we are parents as well. Like Dan
And
said,
and that is a great thing, right, Stephen? Like, I think it's a great moment for reflection. What is our role as parents, and how are we fulfilling that? Because we can use our so-called authority in a soft way, right? Like, if our role is to guide them while they cannot make those decisions, then we cannot put ourselves in the same level and say, what do you want to do? Just eat ice cream today? Because we know that is not a good thing for them, right? So otherwise, I mean, wouldn't you want to eat ice cream and watch TV all day long if you could? But you know better. You know that's not good for you. They may not yet know that because their frontal cortex, even like physiologically speaking, their brain is not yet developed, right? The frontal part of our brain, the frontal cortex that is responsible for cause and consequence decisions, it's only fully grown, it's said, about 21 years of age. And there's some people who are older than 21 and still don't have that fully developed. And so it's important for us to understand that this the power that we have and the responsibility that we have doesn't have to be manifested just in some ways. I think that there are moments where we have to be firm and have a little bit more of an energy, but it's important for us to explain why that is. And I think that is a great point that Stephen makes. And I think that sometimes that doesn't happen because we want to be so loved by our kids. We want their affection, and we're so insecure about ourselves that we just want to be loved. And so we give to them everything that we think is going to make them happy in the short term because it pleases us. But having kids is not just about us, it's about them. So, what is best for them? And so, we got to step away from this idea of giving them everything at all moments because we love them, to giving them the foundation and the work and the preparation for them to succeed on their own as when we are not there, because we're not going to be there, that we know, right? And so, they need to be able to fend for themselves.
Yeah, that's very good. It's extremely important, the points that you were making, because parents, they need. And um we ourselves, I'm sure that there were things, I personally, there were things that my mother would say, and I was really angry, very, very annoyed with her for because I couldn't do other things that other people. I said, but other people are doing it. She said, yes, that's not my responsibility, you are. But now, as a grown-up person, I look back and I'm so grateful that there were times she said no, she put boundaries, because now when you look back and say, "Oh, I felt loved and I felt protected because there was someone watching over me." And I think this is a very important point, as you said, to be loved. Sometimes you need to be the stepmother say no. No. I've got a question actually, sort of coming out a little bit from this, but it was one of the questions that was suggested. And it says, where is here the if say for instance this lack of communication within the family, would it create an environment in which negative spiritual influence could come into the home? How do you see that point? Both of
Definitely,
you, whatever,
definitely.
whoever wants to. If you go on, then Stefan, if you like to start us off.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely this is a way to allow those, let's say, lower influences, not bad influence, let's say lower influences, reach out to our kids, because we need, and also we need to remember that the content in those technologies, YouTube channels, Instagram, Snapchats, all those things, we do have bad quality of videos as well. So we have to fight against spiritual influences, which make the children to go through it, and also we need to be aware of those videos what they are watching every single day, which will lead to open the bridge for those lower influences. It's, unfortunately, it is a 24 hours job. And I have a friend, he used to say to me, having kids is like to play a video game. Always the next phase is worst. So when they're young, you complain, but when they're in teenager times, oh, I'm missing that time when I put them sit in the high chair they stayed. But but we need to do it. We need to be influenced by this. That's why talking about God, talking about a religion, we don't need them to become spiritists, but we need them to remind that there is a God, that is a spiritual influence. And if we do it now at the right time, they when they grow up, when they need it, they will still remember, like you remember your mom saying, giving to you silver boundaries. They used to remember, oh, my dad used to talk about God. My dad used to talk about the spirits, about this influence from the spirits. May, this is what's happening to us today. Dan, what do you think?
100% agree. Right. And as you were talking about that, I was making my notes here. Because I really think that you are hitting a great point here. The way I would zoom out is it's all about heart habits of heart and mind. It's all about habits. And as parents, as we think about our role, what is our role? Is to help our kids develop the best possible habits so that they are learning and preparing themselves for the future. And so, what does that mean? Exactly what Stephen was doing. So, if I want them to become great critical thinkers and be able to differentiate good from bad content, or really engage with good topics, then I want to make sure they're not spending tons of time watching what they should not, right? If I want them to be polite and talk to others, then I need to train them and say, every time you're going to talk to an adult, I want you to look them in the face and shake their hand and say, "Hi, my name is," because a grown up is just a human being, right? Kids sometimes are scared of grown ups and they don't know how to relate. And so it's about us being thoughtful of like, what are the habits that we want our kids to develop? If we don't pay attention to it, the world will. And it will happen what Steven says. For instance, if we let our kids watch a lot of content like TV, YouTube, whatever it is, because we watch TV when you're little. Nowadays, kids watch YouTube. They don't watch TV anymore. Who watches TV, right? This modern day and age, maybe just me, right? But the point is, the amount of information that they are getting there, if they're staying 3 or 4 hours per day on the TV, is more than the amount of information you were giving them, right? So they are receiving more information from these other means that are not as worried as you are about their future success. So we have to be thoughtful and intentional about what is it that we are letting them be exposed to, knowing full well that we cannot prevent them from being connected to the world. We cannot prevent them from having cell phones eventually or from watching YouTube eventually. But until they are able to make better choices, we can push in with some guardrails and kind of figure out what they're watching, right? Stephen was saying, right? And have conversations that really matter so they are also accustomed to having those conversations. Because think about this, by the time they're 16, they will have spent more time watching TV than talking to you, right? And so what they watch is important, right? And if they spend 4 hours a day watching YouTube and you spend 1 hour a week talking to them about God or whatever it is, which one takes precedence in their mind? Which one are they more accustomed to doing? Right? And so it's understandable that a lot of times teenagers don't want to deal with this stuff. They're figuring out the world. They don't want to talk about spirituality, but we got to keep that little seed in there, right? So that they're exposed to it, so that they have the foundation. So once they come back to it, right? Because teenage years, you go outside, you learn, you like, there's a whole world to be explored. So it's understandable they might not be into a lot of the things that we are. But eventually, as they are in their 20s and 30s, that should shift, right? And you have given them the basis for their own exploration of what life is like, the existential questions, and all that kind of stuff. So that's why it's so important, we say, and Stephen was doing a brilliant job at this, talking about God, talking about immortality of the soul, talking about Jesus, if you believe in Jesus, Buddha, if you believe in whatever it is that it's uplifting and good and noble for the soul. But it boils down to what kind of habits, right, are we helping our kids develop? And the challenge is with our day-to-day schedules, oftentimes we don't stop to think about this because we're so busy and we just let it happen. But if things are important to you, what is it that you want your kids to do and learn? And what is it that they're doing to do that? So, what are the habits that you're helping them develop? And I think that that what Stephen brought here with content is a key point today because it's so prevalent, right? Kids are exposed to things all the time. If you don't think they should be exposed to that kind of content, block it or do not let them watch it and explain why, right? Because they can't make their decisions for themselves just yet. So we have
Yeah.
to.
And also then we needed to be very firm as a parents and take your kid to the church, to the spirit center, to the temple, to whatever religion you are. You need to take your kids. Oh, they don't want. No, they want. They need to come with me. They need to see me at the spirit center. They need to see me at the church. They need to see me at the temple. They need to see me doing it. So it's not that, oh, I didn't want, they don't know. You're my son. You need to come.
And if you don't have one geographically near you, then do it at home, right?
Exactly.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Spend time doing it. Yeah.
Gospel at home is 100% a family prayer, if you don't want to call it a gospel at home, a family prayer, a time in which to share this with our kids. We need to. We must it.
That's wonderful what you're both saying, because this is the base, isn't it? That when they grow up, they can choose whatever path but the seeds, as you said, is there and will grow in the time of need. It's very, very important. And, we as spiritists, we are very much into the gospel at home, at least once a week, in which our family together for that half an hour, whatever, for prayer, for being together, and to talk about God and the world and everything that's going around. So we nearly now at the end, and it was so quickly. It was being so wonderful. But I just have a little question. Um, for yourself, because we are spiritists, we are Christians. So, what example of Jesus you would think would be important to bring to the children, to your children, when you talk about God, when you talk about, spirituality, because Jesus was, a spiritual of light that came into our lives. So, How would you bring this to your children?
Simple answer, Sylvia. All of them, right? All examples. You know, I think we can go back to his passage with us and remember, like, let the little children come unto me, right? Let the simplicity come. But he also treated everybody fairly. He spoke to everybody regardless of status, right? And he spoke to them in ways that they understood. He spoke to the disciples in a more sophisticated way because they knew more, but he spoke to the crowds in a simpler way, telling stories sometimes. So is this ability to connect and communicate and adapt to the circumstances, which is really important for Jesus, the ultimate teacher, the only role that he accepted, right? He openly accepted. And what was that? To know how to communicate with our children in different moments. There are moments where we go into more detail when they're ready for that. There are moments when we speak to them, we always welcome them, and we lead by example. I think that if we are able to bring these examples of the Christ, this incredible spirit, and many others out there of great living, of noble living, it is a wonderful addition to our kids. And I think that is will help them create these habits of mind, because kids will naturally gravitate to examples. And if we don't give them these examples, they are going to get that on YouTube, they're going to get that on social media, and it might not be the examples we think are most important for them. So what is our role, and how are we being intentional about giving our kids what they need to succeed in the ways that we wish that they would succeed?
Completely
What do you
agree
think,
with you, Dan.
Stephen?
Yeah, I completely agree with Dan. It's all of them. But if I have to emphasize, I would say speaking gently and honestly, being present and attentive, and choosing words that build rather than break. That's all.
Yeah,
Just it.
wonderful. Wonderful. You two are such a lovely parent. I wish I was your child. Maybe in the next incarnation. Thank you so much for both of you for the time you gave us today and for bringing such a deep and very, very important messages. And you know that there's a lot to think about in what both of you said and meditate. And I hope that this will reach out to parents that we are either with us today or that will listen at a later date, and to help them to be able to guide them in maybe at times where they feel it's difficult, because sometimes dealing with spirits are very, very difficult. So thank you once again very, very much for your time and for your wonderful insights into the subject. So thank you and God bless you all. And thank you everyone for being with us. And I hope you follow us again and come back to new episodes of this discussion. And thank you and muito obrigada a todos. Boa tarde.